Welcome to our video today. Today we are working on hair. This is a continuation of the in-person class that was held at the Stamp and Scrapbook Expo in Orlando. So this was from the class Copic Hair and Skin Simplified, and today I am making a video here on the hair just to give a little bit more in-depth teaching to this and a little bit of a recap as well. So in the class, we used our E04, E11, E21, E00, 000, and R20 to do our lighter skin tone. We used our E59, E57, E15, E33, R22, and E31 to do our dark skin tone. So I've already got these colored up here because there is another video where Annie is teaching these on this. So you've got your stamp that you're able to stamp this out. So you go ahead and do that first, obviously. And then the markers that we used in class were the W9, W7, W5, W3, W1, and the BG01 for our Peacock Blue hair. Now, I also wanted to show an alternate to that, which was using a cooler toned gray. So I've chosen the C9, C7, C5, C3, C1, and an alternate blue, the B93. So we're going to be using that. And then some of you also met Ebony, who is on our planner team and worked at the booth and helps us out a lot. So for that, we're going to be using the same W9s, but we're going to be doing a red undertone, so R56. So we're going to be doing a peacock blue hair. We're going to do an alternate blue hair and an alternate dark hair with a warm undertone. And I'm going to show you some different techniques on how you can achieve these in different ways. So you want to first make sure you've got your markers, and you can also practice with any of the other grays as well, like the toner grays, because we have the W's, we have the T's, we have the C's, and that's right? C, T, W, and the N's, the naturals. So all of them make a great dark base. It just depends on what you're going for. So with this hair color, we've gone with the warms and a blue, but I wanted to show you what it looks like again with the cooler tones in a blue, and then doing a warm grays, and then adding a warmer undertone with it. So that's why doing the R56. And this most closely resembles how Ebony's hair looks like in real life. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glasses on, and then we're going to go over some of the hair. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this little girl on the left, and we're going to go ahead and start with that first base color and the set that we used in the in-person class, which was our W9, which is our warm gray number 9. And again, if you don't have the W's, you can use another color as well. So first, we're going to go over some of the techniques of how we do this. And I'm going to start that by, I choose a part where we have lines that Annie has already drawn in. And I usually choose that as my starting point. So what I'll do here is I've decided that here is her part. You can see that right here. And I'm going to just slightly flick, maybe aggressively flick on that one out from that point. And I'm just trying to start at the hairline to give her a little bit of depth right from her hairline. So I'm just kind of starting out from where those lines are. I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to try and be a little bit lighter and not too aggressive with those flicks there. So you can see we've got that started right there. I'm going to start from the ends over here, continue. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Then what I want to do is I want to create just a little bit of depth right here. So I'm going to create smaller flicks right there, just coming up above where that part is. And I'm going to shift my paper and turn it. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to come in And I'm just going to put those flicks coming out here because this is where I want it a little bit deeper in that depth and that shadow to be. I'll use the points of her little pigtails here as well. And when you do it, you're going to try and curve it around a little bit. So you kind of want to follow the lines the best you can. You're also going to want to come out of where those little baubles are and around here. So here I'm going to try, and again, I'm kind of flicking out, trying to use very gentle pressure, just the tip of my marker, and I want it just kind of coming out right from here. We're going to do the same on the other side, and it's always best to turn your paper to make it easier for you to color. So now we have that W9 in place. We're going to move on to our W7. This warm gray number 7 is our next color. And we're going to go in. So where you've already laid your W9 in here, you don't want to start from the bottom or you'll start to lose that dark. So you're going to start from like, I'm going to say 3/4 of the way out from where you colored. And we're just going to, again, lightly flick some of that color in there. Because we're just going to start to extend it up. And we want to leave a point where we're going to meet in the middle for our highlight. So again, just a little bit. Hair, I find, is one of the hardest things to learn, or at least it was for me. Probably hair and skin are the hardest, so that's why we tried to make a little class and kind of simplify it. So again, we're just going to come around here, and we're just adding little flicks out from the ends of her pigtails. And we're going to come up a little bit from where we did it right here, going into her hair there. We're going to come out here a bit as well from either side. And now we can move on to our W5. So again, as you go lighter, it will start to take some of that color out. So if you go too far and too deep into your previous colors, you're going to start to lighten it where you don't want to. So you just want to make sure that you are starting just now from kind of just where you left off. And again, try to use light pressure when you're coming around. So I'm going to turn here and here. Now here I might just kind of curve this line around there. And here I'm going to just go under those baubles. So I'm just kind of squiggling under her little hair tie here. That is about where you should be. Now we're going to go into our W3, our warm gray number 3. Here again, so you just... At this point, we're just kind of kissing those edges a bit. We're not bringing it in too far. Can close in this a little bit now if we want in here. It's going to be a little bit deeper and darker shadowed under there. So a little bit here. So it's going to be harder to see some of these on camera as it starts to get into these lighter markers. But we should be about there. Now too, I always do carry around with me, or when I'm working with my Copics, I always use a colorless blender because let's face it, sometimes Kevin goes outside the lines. So I will just bring a colorless blender. This one's from Ohuhu. I use this one because it has this fine point. They also have a broad nib. They also have a brush nib as well. So just there. All right, so finally, or not quite finally, but now we're going to move on to our W1. So our W1, I'm going to just kind of sweep across the middle here in those white spaces now. And a little bit of blend through from my darkest point in that hair out. And then our BG01. So our BG01, I'm going to just flick through the middle sections here where she's got that highlight. And then just kind of following it around. And I should pay more attention because I am sometimes coloring off the line here. And I'm just going to fill those in like that. So now that we've got it over, I always find it helpful to go back because it's just going to make your hair look even better. So you're going to go back in because some of what you've colored over has lightened it up a bit. So you're going to want to go back in. So I'm going back in with my W9. So that's my darkest one. I'm just going to make sure that I've got some of that rich depth that I want in where I want it. So some of that W9. I'm going to skip over my W7 and go into the W5 now. Just kind of adding that in. Now I am going to go to my W3 next. So I'm just going to make sure that if I find any parts that are too light in the middle, I'm just going to go over there, like around this little bobble. It might be hard to see on camera, but there's a little bit light right here at the edge. So I want to get rid of that because I want to keep where you'd naturally see dark where it should be. And go through and just make sure any of your lines are kind of perfect where you want them to be. And then go through with your BG01 again. And I have colored outside the line a little bit in a couple places, so I'm just gonna erase it, but this is just practice. And you want to try and have the most control you can when you're coloring. And then too, always go back and take a look and say, okay, do I like it? Do I need to add a little bit more? And I do feel like I need to add a little bit more. So I'm going to go in with my W7 and say, hey, I feel like I need a little bit more dark in some spots. I'm just kind of spin it around and it gets a little too blue or too much of whatever, you can kind of go over. Nothing wrong with that. And then with this blue, I'm going to go back in a bit. Here I want it to blend a little nicer, a little softer. I want that blue to be just in there. And again, too, if you want, go back in and going with that W9 again. Just to put some of that definition back in there again. So that is our first one done. So now we're going to do the exact same one, but I'm going to show you an alternate way to color it. And that is going to be, we're going to be putting in our blue first. So this makes it super easy in some ways, because we're going to take our BG01. We're going to take that chisel nib and we're going to just color in all his hair. So what happens sometimes is when you're using a much lighter marker, is that marker, because it is lighter, does contain some more alcohol. So it will kind of eat up or lighten your darker colors. So if you're wanting kind of a blue-black hair, sometimes when you place your blue in, it takes some of that depth out too much, and then you do have to end up going back over it and kind of adding stuff in. And you still will, but not to the degree like we did over here, because we don't really need to worry about, oh, okay, well, where's that color going to be? How are we getting that undertone in there? So I am making sure that I've got his base here nice and saturated. And the the Copic markers are kind of a semi-translucent marker, which means as you lay them down, your color will get richer and richer. So you can see like one pass just looks like this, but as you build up, your color gets deeper and richer. So I really want to make sure at this point I've really got a great blue undertone to this hair so that I've got it fully saturated in here with my BG01. And take a look. All right. So again, we are going to start with our W9. So again, here, we're going to start at where the little tips are. So this was a little harder because we had a lot of curves in there to work with. So this one might be a little bit easier for us. So we're going to use that W9. And we're going to start those points. Again, I'm going to try and be very gentle here. And sorry, I bumped the camera a little bit. Didn't mean to do that. So here, we're going to just add a little bit of flick right at the tip here of his hair. And then we're going to turn it around and we're going to do the same on the opposite side. So where his hair is coming out here. And right there. And then again from this part here. But I'm only doing kind of like this chunk. Then we're going to go here, a little bit there. So I've got it there. I want to have just a tiny bit down here on both sides. I'm going to come in a little bit. So we're going to basically keep trying to follow where your lines go. If you want it to look more natural, follow the shape that your lines take. So again, very light with the strokes. I'm going to turn around to make this easier for me to come off these little points. So here I'm just going to come down a little bit and try and curve my line around. in there. We have our W9 in there. I'm just going to make sure my tips are kind of filled in, that I don't have those like little white spaces where I don't want them. So from our W9, I didn't want to use W9 right under this section right here. Sorry. So that is where I'm going to use my W7. So I'll start there just so you know, because I just didn't want it too dark here. So I'm just going to do a tiny little bit right there and a little bit right there. So I'm going to come out from here. I'm going to try and keep these short. Just doing a little bit. I'm going to turn it around, finish those sections with this color. Just a little. I'm going to come in here. Trying to do just kind of little flicks, not too much. Around. Then I'm going to come off these ends, continue with that curve. Again, I'm not going too far in. A little bit into the sides here. And we're going to our W5, so that warm gray number 5. Start at the tips again. Into the sides here. Now right up into here. Going to start again, just kind of following that curve. We're getting closer to the center, and I'm just trying to again lightly flick across here, and same for this side. So I'm just kind of lightly kind of bringing it in and across that corner. So W number 3. So I'm going to go in. Now I'm going to try and keep this a little bit more to the bottom side of some things. So when I'm going across, I'm just trying to go closer to the lines that were drawn and not necessarily right through. In the side here. I'm going to start to fill that in now a little bit. Here I'm going to go for like a tiny bit of blend. Make sure things are looking nice and smooth. And then our W1 is our last color here. And we can just kind of sweep it across. So you can see here how that works with laying the blue down first. Of course, I am going to go back in with my dark marker, which is my W9. And I'm just going to make sure that I have everything kind of where I want it, which is just make sure I've got just enough of the dark in there. Just make sure I have that right amount of depth. And my contrast exactly the way I like it. Dry up there a little bit. So here is a kind of a little bit of a tip. So I don't know if you could tell there, but it's kind of leaving a little bit of a shine now. So that is often a good kind of sign that you need to replace the nib of your Copic. Once it starts to get shiny, you know that nib is getting old, which this one is. So you would want to replace that chisel nib with something, with a brand new nib, because they can be changed. I'm going to go in with my W7 again, just to make sure I have everything exactly the way I want it looking. If you do want to, you can go over a little bit with that blue again. If you want it a little extra blue and into the side here. And there you have some peacock blue hair. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you now the a cooler version, or what it looks like when you use the C's, which is the cool grays, and I'm using the B93, which is a lighter, cooler blue. So I'm just going to make sure I have all my markers here for me. So these are my C's, my C9, 7, 5, 3, 1, and B93. And you can see here, I just kind of split this in half just to swatch them out on this side. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab that B93. So for this B93, I am going to start with it. Again, I want to put my layer under there first. And to start this technique, what I want you to do is just kind of dapple it in with your marker. You can call it stippling if you want when you do the dots, but we do want to fill it in, so you could just color it if you want. However, this is going to help you as we move on through coloring of the hair. Because what we want to work on is the texture of his hair. Because we're not really going to be using that flicking motion that we did before. We're not going to be just kind of putting those lines in with little strokes. So here, I just want to make sure I have a really good base. I don't want to really see any light. I'm okay if some of the blue is varied, where some spots are darker, some spots are lighter. That is okay. I just kind of want to make sure, though, that everything is covered in there. So now I have that base of the B93. And you can see the difference between the BG01 and the B93. So this definitely is a cooler, a little bit more gray toned blue. So we are going to start with our darkest again, and that is going to be our C9, so our cool gray. So what I'm going to do is put the C9 where his hair is going to be shadowed the most. So I'm going to start right by his hairline. You can see I am just kind of dotting it along his hairline. With small little dots. Now what I want to do is follow some of it where it's a little bit going to be more shadowed here. So I'm just kind of looking for the beginnings of some of where this hair is. The underside here a little bit. Because what I'm kind of doing is I'm just thinking of the light is coming down straight from the top of its head. So anything in the middle and down here and at some of the ends would be a little bit more shadowed. And we can put some random ones in there as well. So at first you should have something that looks a little bit like that. So from our C9, we're going to go into our C7. And we're going to go ahead and start filling that in, but a little bit more again towards the bottom here. Now we're going to try and avoid these pieces here. These little kind of like dread pieces or coil pieces. We don't want to fill in the ends too much, because we have something that we're going to be doing a little bit different there. So again, we're just kind of stippling that color in with our C7. Now, what I want you to do from this point is we're going to grab our W. No, sorry, not our W. Woo. Get over here. I want you to grab your C9. And then with your C9, we're actually going to be using the chisel nib. And what we're going to do is we're going to carefully put some lines in through the ends of the hair where we are having it, where those dreads or those coils will be. And we're going to go around here, and you can come in from one side, in from the other side. And I'm just going to turn it as I go. And again, I'm going to do it right in here. There we go, just to change up the little bit of the texture there. So that was our C9, C7, then, or sorry, actually what we did was our B9, 3, then our C9 with stippling, then our C7, back in with the C9 with our chisel nib. Now I'm going to go in with my C5. I'm going to continue to stipple some of this color in, and I'm starting to go over some of the blue. Not trying to color over all of it yet. Just kind of adding it in there slowly. Going across the hairline, see if there's anything I missed, if I want it to be a little darker. Starting to slowly bring it out. Then our C3. Bringing that up, and I'm putting this a little bit higher. Starting to go into the ends here. Again, I'm just kind of stippling that in there. And what I'm looking for is that when I put the tip of the marker down, that some of that ink just bleeds out just enough. And lastly, we have our C1. So our C1 here, so where I want to lighten this piece of hair up back down here at the end, I'm going to go through, go over it a couple times. It's going to start to lift that color out. Same here. And then I want to kind of blend in and go over this blue. So I'm going to go over these ends. It's going to also start to soften some of the lines that we put in with the chisel nib, which is okay because we want to soften it up and make it look a little bit more natural. So I'm going in here just like that. And again, just want to make sure I am releasing pigment from my marker onto the page and over here. And I am concentrating definitely on those ends. Right in here, I want a little bit more. And then too, if you want to kind of sweep it back a bit too, just to get some of that lightness into those ends, you can. Blend it through. So that was our C1. So I'm going to go back in a little bit with my C9 with the chisel nib again, and, or sorry, the brush nib, my apologies. Just make sure I'm adding just a little bit of depth in here, but only in some places. A little bit with that C7, but I'm kind of going in faster now. And then that C5. And again, you can see that I'm very just quickly dabbing it through. From that C5, I'm going to grab my B9 3 again. So that's that light crockery blue. And here I'm going to go ahead and go in over some of my ends. And again, I am just kind of stippling this color through. Then you can add some more right into the middle. I'm just kind of lopping it in there, making sure I get it to release some color. Woo. There we go. So we have an alternate blue hair color. So you can see that this has, I'm calling it a little bit more natural looking blue-black hair, where the Peacock Blue is definitely that BG forward, that blue-green forward hair color up here. So that is our color with our blues. So now we're going to grab those W's again. So that's a W9, W7, W5, W3, and our W1. And then this time we're going to be using that R56. So this is our current. This is going to be our ebony hair color. So I'm going to call it ebony because ebony works with us. And a lot of you were wondering about her. And I was like, do you know what? She has a red burgundy undertone. So let's go ahead and use that. So we're going to start with the same way. I like to, for this undertone here, put that color in first. We are going to stipple it in. Now, just know those are her ears. Those are her earrings. We don't need to color that. Well, you can if you want to. But don't color it with red. So you'll see here how this current color, this R56, is a really good warm undertone. So when you're coloring hair, one of the best things to do is to look at real hair color. So go ahead and look at pictures, look at your own hair, and say, what undertones do I see? And then choose those. So I have my Copic chart right here, and when I was kind of going through, I was like, all right, what color would make a really good undertone? And then that is when I landed on the R56, which is right here. So it's always best to try and compare, like, especially if you're trying to make it look more chibi, more cartoon, sure, go with whatever colors. But if you want something to represent more of a person, go ahead and look at, like, what does their skin tone look like? What does their hair color look like? What undertones are in there? And go from there. So you can see once I have kind of my outlines done or going around those edges, I'm going to go ahead and I am again just kind of stippling all that color in. And at this point, what you basically want is just to make sure that you don't have any white showing. So here I'm going to go through, go around my edges. But yeah, so when I looked at Ebony's hair, this is kind of the color I saw closest to. Now, I also do not have Ebony right beside me, so kind of had to guess on this a little bit with this undertone, but I did take a look because I knew I wanted to color her hair like this for this class video. And again, you could try this with any other colors. You could try it with different blues. You could try it with greens. You could try it with any reds. Pretty much anything you want. All right, so once I kind of have that outline done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just stipple it in there. And no, you do not have to worry. This is not going to ruin your brush nib because, like, you are just kind of putting the marker down and paper immediately just kind of sucks that color up. So you don't have to worry that, like, you don't need to press too hard or anything like that. Like, if you want, you just push it down and here's like a good spot right there. Just releases the ink. Also, if you were in my class, I told you best way to color is a little bit more 90-degree angle to your paper if you can. What I'm trying to show you, I need to kind of keep my marker on an angle because when I do this, you don't know where I'm coloring, you can't see, but when I do this, you can see where I'm putting my color down. So I always say when I color for a class and for a video, my coloring is never quite as great as it is if I like really like not just take my time, but if I'm coloring properly at my desk and I don't have like a camera right here and like lights in my way and stuff like that. It's a little bit more of an unnatural way to color when you've got a camera right above you and lights in your way, and there's only a certain amount of distance I can use, and when you're trying to actually show people, okay, this is where the color's going. All right, so I think that is a great little underlayment of that color. So that R56, it's really nice and in there. So now we're going to go ahead and we are going to start to put in that color. So we're going to use our W9. There we go. So our W9 is going to be in our darkest spots. Now what you want to do is keep your W9 more heavily concentrated toward the bottom, and as you go up into that hair, you're going to get lighter, except where you want a little bit more depth around the face. And you don't want to necessarily get rid of all of that color on the outside edge either. So you want to keep a little bit away from the outside line. And right now we're being a little bit cautious of where we put our little stippling dots because we've got to leave some room. And up here we can go even, just try and go even smaller. So we want some up there, but we want the dots to be even smaller than what we had before. Now we're going to move on to our W7. So it's our warm gray number 7 again. You can see here, just to make it easier, I labeled everything on this side, and again with that little swatch. So now we're going to, again, down near the bottom here. And here we're starting to fill in some of the spaces. Not necessarily go over where we've already gone. So here you're going to try and concentrate slightly more on just starting to get rid of a little bit more of that red undertone, or not get rid of it, but hide it. Then again, as you come up, you want to go a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller with that W7. From the W7, we're going to go into our W5. And again, just sort of starting to go over those red spots that are 5, 6, but not completely. So we're starting to be a little bit more careful now of where we're placing this. And again, as we come up to the top, I can add a little bit now into the side. Add a little bit more into here. Then I'm going to come up a little faster. A little bit heavier into here now. Then here, I just want to make sure I'm going a little bit more into those edges now. We don't want them left too highlighted. But we want to keep some of that outline and that little bit of halo of red around this top part for sure. Then we've got our W3 next. So our W3, we're going to go a little bit in here, into the bottom. We're going to let it blend and meld some of that color out. The dark, not too much. And then we can go right into the top. And it's going to kind of stipple quickly around here. little bit into those edges. And then our W1. And I'm going to go over that everywhere. Now with the W1, I am going to kind of go right over those bottom edges now, just to kind of help meld that color together, the dark with those light edges, and around the hairline a bit. Now when you're going over with a lighter Copic over some darker too, sometimes it is helpful to use a scrap piece of paper just to make sure you get some of that light off, or if you've picked up another color or darker, because you can do that. So that was our W1. So that's kind of like our base first layer. So I'm going to go back in again with my W9, of course. Going to be a little bit more sporadic, but I am going to start to bring it up a little higher this time. Go in a little bit quicker. A little bit higher here, just to make sure we got enough depth up there, but lighter, and try to be here. You're going to go very gentle, very soft. So that was the W9. We're going to switch up how we're coloring this now. So now we're using our W7. We're not going to necessarily dot it or stipple it. So right now we're going to do little coils, like little backwards C's, or no, that's not a backward C, that's a C. So I'm going to do little C's here. I'm going to do them on this side too. Just to make sure that we are kind of breaking up some of that stippling texture. And you can then start to do, this is the motion I'm going to use now. So I'm kind of doing this. So like your little coils. So I'm just going to go through and just lightly, I'm just kind of kissing the paper with these little coils. And again, it's just to make sure I'm sort of getting a natural texture in there. So that was the W7. So with the W5, I'm going to actually turn my page right around. So I'm doing the opposite of what I just did. So now I'm going to have my little C's kind of going around the other way. And then again, I'm going to do my little coilies. Then I can spin her back. Last one, it's going to be, well, last of the W's, it's going to be that W3. I'll go through, and this time I'm going to just stipple a little bit more. Just kind of make sure I have any of the color where I want it to be. Anything that I think needs to be kind of blended or softened down a bit, like around her hairline. Then we'll go back in with our R5-6 again, that current, and I'm just going to make sure that those are the parts that where I want up near the top here that are definitely more highlighted and saturated with that color. A little bit around her face here, because now this is like an R5-6, so it's a little bit deeper still, and as we go in again, we are layering it up. It is making things a little bit darker. So I'm going to go around her hairline here, just make sure that's nice and filled in, that it doesn't look too light around her face. So you can kind of see It just slowly gets darker. And then we can go in and add a few more little stipples. Do the little swirlies in here. And there we go. We have our burgundy red ebony inspired hair color. And there we go. So we used some of the W's, the warm grays. We used the cool grays. We used a blue green, which was the BG01. We used the B93, which is our light crockery blue, which is a little bit more of a gray blue. And then we used this R56, which was a kind of a warm red. This was our current, and it went really well with those W's, and we showed you how to do a little bit of different textures and hair techniques. So I hope you enjoyed this video with me, and I hope you enjoyed the class. I am glad that I got to do this hair for you, and for those of you who were in the class that I promised this video would be done like right after the week, I'm sorry, life got a little too busy and things got away from me, so I apologize. But here is the video now. And then actually here's a really good thing here. You can see that shine right here on this hair. That is definitely a sign of time to change that nib. When it gets that shiny glossy look, that's a no-no. That means time to change your nib. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this class and learned some techniques. If you want, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you get notifications of any new videos come out for our releases or any of our tutorials. And give us a like. It really helps that algorithm, helps us get our name out there. And be sure to leave a comment. Let me know if you liked this video. And if you have any questions, just drop a comment as well. And I will be happy to answer any of them for you. Thanks a lot and have a wonderful day. And remember to stamp it, color it, and love it. Thanks, everybody.